name is Akua Ofosuhene. I'm a psychedelic guide specializing in ayahuasca. But today I'm going to talk about a journey that I've been on looking for visionary plants of Ghana. And the idea actually for the talk was through a conversation I had with Darren. And I've been looking for plants anyway, but it was really helpful to really sort of concentrate that because I was getting confused, but I'll discuss that. So, first pictures there, brilliant. So the first two pictures are two plants that I'd always heard about in Ghana in terms of spiritual plants. And my mum told me about both of these. So the vine on the ground, that thick one, I have a piece of that kind of vine here. And this is called ahomachem or ahomabosum. Ahomabosum means rope deity. And anyone who's seen ayahuasca before can see how similar it looks, and when it's clean you can see all the shapes. And it was amazing to find this because I was actually brewing my first ever ayahuasca brew, and at that time she hadn't finished teaching me that I'm not allowed to leave it when she's on. So when she was on doing the last brew, I'd already been brewing for about 13 hours, and the last one I'm reducing down, and I went out, and I went to the market, and at this herbalist stall, there was some ahomachem, which looks just like ayahuasca. So I bought some, and then I phoned an old client of mine who's a channeler, and I said, this cannot be an accident. You know, what does this plant want me to do? And she said, it wants to be added to the ayahuasca. Now, this was my first brew, so I can tell you already, it wasn't the best brew, but I added some, and I drank it, and afterwards, my friend phoned me, and I was like, no, it didn't really work. And it took ages to remember that actually I danced for 6 hours. And but I think I was expecting the vine to appear and talk to me. So I thought it hadn't worked and I left it alone. But ahomachem, I thought I'd just introduce everyone to this straight away because I learned so much about this vine. Like, you can't cut it once the sun comes up enough and you're forming a shadow. You must never let your shadow touch ahomachem. When you go to cut ahomachem, you have to take some cowrie shells and divine. And if you do 4 cowrie shells and you get 2 up, 2 down, that's a yes. There's several yeses, but that's the only one I remember. But if you get a no or a maybe, you have to go home. And you have to come back another day until the vine says, yes, you can cut me. You can't cut ahomachem when you have your period. You can't cut ahomachem if you had an argument in the morning. There's loads and loads and loads of rules around cutting ahomachem, and loads of prayers you have to do, even as a herbalist, to use ahomachem. And after a while of thinking it hadn't worked, it started to guide me, though, with my work with ayahuasca in Ghana, because I was thinking, well, if ahomachem demands so much, I think the ayahuasca is also demanding so much, you know, not just kind of brewing. And that's when I started to not leave it on the fire and go away and do other things. I actually thought, no, I think it feels like I should stay and show some reverence. And so I keep some ahomachem just to remember how it feels for me to also work with this plant from somewhere else, because it feels like they're both teaching me to be more in reverence with the medicines. So the other plant we have here, the green leaves, they call that the leaf of life. And we say in Tree it's Tamiu, which is, I don't know if there's any Ghanaians here, but it's literally, if you hate me, you will die. Which is, and so you have Tamiu at the entrance of your business, entrance of your house, because it's warding off evildoers and anyone who's thinking bad towards you. And my best friend, she has 2 big ones on her porch, and a big African mask and some cowrie shells, and that's how she leaves her doors open all the time. So as you're coming up, you know, you start rethinking your intentions of why you're coming to her house. And it was really interesting for me looking for visionary plants, because it was like, okay, I found this, I know about Tamiu, let me go to some of the elder plants people to find out about our visionary plants. And I joined an association because of working with the medicine, and also as a way to meet more people working with plants. And I would tell them about magic mushrooms, and I would tell them about ayahuasca, and I tell them about iboga, because although we grow iboga in Ghana, and we're actually West Africa's largest producer now of iboga, most people don't know about iboga because it's all for export. But when I started talking to people, it was really difficult, because they would say things like, oh, yeah, the best visionary plant is this. I'd be like, oh, that's rosemary. They'd be like, yeah, rosemary, it's the best visionary plant. And I'd speak to other people, and loads of people saying basil. And so I realized, okay, there's something going on. I'm describing what you see, I'm describing the changes, and everyone's going, yeah, basil. So it wasn't working with the traditional healers trying to find these plants, but they were telling me about how to communicate with plants. And I learned more about rosemary here, and actually why it's called rosemary. I learned that here just yesterday, someone was telling me. But rosemary kept on coming up because it's quite hard to grow in Ghana, and apparently it's something to do with sea level. So it's very prized for its spiritual gifts, and it's used in loads of medicines. And when I was trying to explain to people that, oh, rosemary doesn't give you the kind of visions I'm talking about, they were like, well, maybe that's because the god on your head doesn't work with rosemary. So then it was like, oh, God on your head, which I'd heard about with Ifa, and they'll talk about your Ori. And so it was something similar to that in Ghana as well. But they would then ask me, okay, what waters do your family, your female line work with? What hills and mountains do the male line of your family work with? So, okay, these were like really difficult questions because my family are now Christians, and they don't work with any of these things. So I had to go for divination. And when I went for divination, the first time I was actually told that most of the spirits I work with are not actually from my matrilineal side, but my ancestors I work with are from my matrilineal side. So they said, I need to look into my grandfather's side. So that was good, and that led me to a beautiful river. And I haven't still yet found out the plant to do with that river. But what I learned was that now I know the river, I must now go for divination to find out what plants that river works with. But I was told by a friend who's a diviner that how I described Ahomachem meant that Ahomachem was one of my spiritual supports, and he's going to help me do some extra work to find out the other plants that go with that particular water body. But I was able to go with my nephew to the water body, and I was told I couldn't get the water from the middle because my grandfather used the water from the head, and so we had to go trekking. We found the head of the river, and we got some of the water, brought some back, it's in the freezer. Don't know what to do with it at the moment, but it's something I'm going to have on my altar when I get back. So I'm really excited to get to meet that water and also get introduced then hopefully to the other plants that I'm supposed to work with. So I press next. Okay. So here we have the Ofosuhene. So he's the Asante king. So he's the king of all the Asante people who are in the middle of Ghana. And this is part of his coronation. And what happens is when, I think we have the same saying in English as well, like the king is dead, long live the king. Yeah, we have the same kind of saying. So the king before him died, and then he came on, and you have these leaves that are put into your mouth. And I learnt that each king will have the leaves of wisdom that are to do with his ori, and then after his ori, the plants that he works with. But everybody's is secret, because this will be the plants that help him speak the truth and with wisdom. And so you get to see the edges. So me and a few friends, we did zoom in, but I'm not going to make a guess. I can't tell what plants he has in his mouth. And normally when he's walking, someone will be carrying a pot of water, and the top of the pot apparently will also contain these leaves that are there for him to constantly, anytime he drinks, hopefully speak with wisdom. In front of the Ofosuhene walks the man in white who's carrying those leaves. Now, I was told that will have Ahomachem, and it will also have rosemary, and it will also have tamiewu, because tamiewu is the strongest that will block any kind of negativity. But nearer the bottom, it will have his particular protection plants in there. And those are secret and not for any of us to know. And what was interesting with this was I remember filming a long time ago. I had a short period of time as a documentary filmmaker, and I went to film the Ofosuhene's 10th anniversary. And I got lots and lots of access because the man who was carrying that pot at that time was the ex-husband of one of my cousins. And so it was really good. I got to do all this filming and everything. And he told me that before he would carry this pot, he would have to go into the bush. There would be like 7 days of all these different plants that he would wash. And then the day before, there is some plants that are squeezed and some water goes into his eye, a bit like sananga. It really, really, really hurts. And he says this was to give him extra vision. And he was saying he has no memory of any of the processions at all. He starts, there's the two guys, and they kind of hold him, and he does that walk. But he always used to say that each procession would also change his life. Now, when he told me this, it was before I ever knew about psychedelics. And now I know that whatever it was they put in his eyes and his descriptions of how it would change his life, there's something in there. It wasn't just, a bit of pepper in the eye. So after kind of really realizing that my idea of psychedelics and looking for psychedelics in Ghana and the idea of visionary plants in Ghana, after I realized they weren't the same thing, it did start me thinking about how else can I use plants, other plants, to get the extra vision or the extra stories or the extra wisdom that are actually in all the other plants. So I started speaking to herbalists about that. Sort of, do you have to be, we have a word called, we have a word, okomfo. That's someone who goes into trance, the kind of things you might have seen on TV. There's lots of drumming, and the person goes into trance. There are those people. But below them, you have obosumfo. That's someone who's working with plants, but they're not just a herbalist. They will also look at the spiritual aspects. They'll do divination. They'll look at your family tree, what waters walk with you, what plants walk with you. You've got obosumfo. And then below them, you've got dunsini, and that's a herbalist. And they do a little bit of divination. But I was trying to think of how to bring all of these people in a way into what I do using ayahuasca, and also how to bring that knowledge of using a much wider variety of plants to really bring about healing, but also through the vision. Because what I can see is that if you can see the change, if you can see your story and let go of your story, then the changes you're making are really, really profound. And so if there's a way of accessing these plants, I became really passionate about how do we do this? How do we bring this forward? How do we do whatever dietas are needed to be able to use a much wider range of plants for our healing and stuff. So I'm thinking about all of this, and I was able to go to an amazing farm that's actually started by a German guy, and he's growing iboga, vakanga, the capi vine, chacruna. He's also growing a plant called Akua, which is a really, really, really strong painkiller. So I'll just show you like 2 minutes and I'll bring everything to a close. Okay. Do I press play? Just by pressing next? Yep. Thank you. I think the volume didn't come. Or shall I just speak? Manic depression, bipolar, all sorts of different mental illnesses. Which so I'm actually quite looking forward to speaking to Nanase, a Ghanaian herbalist, to see if he uses that in the treatment of mental illnesses. Yes, that's chacruna. And some capi vine that they're getting ready for export. It's heart shaped. And you can't farm capi in a normal field. You have to farm it in a jungle setting with lots of different heights of trees and lots of different types of trees and plants. And it's the same thing with the chacruna. Yeah, it's quite interesting because now I'm going through the farm with this post-rain. Yeah, totally. So I'm actually stepping in the side bits. Lovely. And they also found you can't, as yet anyway, farm it from this tree to the community. It doesn't seem to work. Yeah, the fruits gave you the seeds. Wow.
Look how fat that
And I found out just before I went to Ghana that
there
the
any on the
iboga
ground?
had 9 years ago.
On the
came
other
from
place,
this
there was
farm.
some on the
I thought it
ground,
came
no.
from Gabon, and that's the mother bush that's led to the whole plantation,
that's
which
the
is the
green,
biggest
that's
iboga
right.
plantation
Right.
in West Africa.
Beautiful.
That one's not ready yet.
Yeah. Where's the fruit? I can't see.
Oh yes, I see. Vakanga, yeah, I see it.
Yeah,
Oh,
and this is the Vakanga.
This is the
Grows
Vakanga.
wild in Ghana,
And that's what
which
they use to
contains,
treat
ibogaine.
schizophrenia in Nigeria.
So I can push this to the end. So I discovered all of this, super happy, all this stuff, and I've got all these plans in my head all starting to formulate how I would like to work in Ghana. During the time I was looking for the visionary plants, I went off and I found Datura was growing in Ghana, and they use it for hair stuff, they use it for skin, they use it for asthma, they use it for all these different illnesses. But I was surprised that we had all these different names for it all over Ghana, but it was really hard to find because they've been cutting them down. And I couldn't understand why they were cutting them down. And I found out that lots of young people had been taking the Datura. And what had been happening was that we've got a little bit of an opiate crisis in Ghana. And as young people are finding, and it's mostly young people, if they can't afford to buy the pills, they were going out to find Datura. And that's why communities are cutting them down and burning them. And this was really distressing to hear because I had no idea we had this opiate crisis. And I started thinking, well, if I'm working with visionary plants, ayahuasca, and I had never thought of working with iboga, but it's there, and there's vakanga, and we've got this situation. How can we bring this together? And always with the medicine, almost like magic, all of a sudden, I met a doctor. What does this doctor do? He's a part of a group of doctors who work for free in rehab centres in Ghana. And because of them, rehab centres can afford to charge just 7,000 cedis for 6 months residential, which is £350, which is low even for Ghana, for 6 months residential. So I couldn't believe it because I've had this thing since I got to Ghana. I don't want to start a charity. I don't want to start an NGO. I just want to plug myself in where something's already going on. So met these doctors and I'm like, I can come with something. Where would you like me? And what was interesting was I learned that the whole thing with treatment in Ghana is about cleansing, and all of this psychological support. So I'm going to be part of the cleansing. And just very quickly, I also was lucky enough to have another ambition of mine, which was to work with people coming out of prison. And I served ayahuasca to a pastor, and the medicine said to him, tell this woman your trip, and his trip was about working with prisoners. So once again, I get to plug myself in to an already existent machinery to get to use these visionary plants. And hopefully I'll get to expand it and not just use ayahuasca and iboga, but the other plants that we have that are even cheaper growing in Ghana. Thank you very much.